So what is JWT, right? So this is called JSON Web Token. Basically, this is commonly used for managing authorization. So we have seen before, right? So auth to authorization, this is another way. And it's basically a standard way of communication between two parties, as we have seen before also, but it follows a RFC 7519 specification. So yeah, you can always see the specification document in this link. So mainly there are two things basically, in the authorization strategies we have seen before. Those are like a session token based sessions, right? So session based, where reference token, we see like reference token, right? And here it is like value token. Now what is the difference between reference token and value token? We will see with some examples. Okay, I'll just use a whiteboard. If you see HTTP, right, so all this API communication happens over HTTP. HTTP is stateless. So each request has to, tell the server that from where it is coming, right? I'll give you one very simple example. Okay, so suppose this is my client. Okay, and I have one server. Okay, now suppose I'm requesting one static URL. Okay, so in that case, right, there's no problem, right? Server can give me the response immediately, right?
Yes.
So it doesn't need to check. For example, I'm doing a Google search, right? I really don't need to log in, right? I can do the search using login, but if that's up to me, like, I can do a pure, Google search without login.
Yes.
So for static URLs, no problem, right? Now consider this server has two pages, P1 and P2. Okay, page 1 and page 2 basically. Now, and suppose, that needs some identity, right? I want to access my email, right? So I have to log in basically, right? So static one URL will be there, plus client has to send identity, right? Okay, now I'm requesting for P1. Then if identity is there, server knows client. Okay, yeah, I know it is coming from size machine, size credential, so it will give the response with P1. Okay, I'm getting it. Now I have used this P1, right? So now since I need another page, P2, for example, right? I need another page now. Same client is requesting another page for P2, right? Now can the server immediately can give the page P2 to a client? Server cannot, right?
Yes.
Because server will not save any state of the client. It's the client responsibility to send the identity every time to the server. That's where is the HTTP. This is how the HTTP work. So next request also, suppose I am sending one more request here, right? I have to send the static IP of the server plus identity plus detail of like, which resource I want. Like this time I want P2. Right? So every time I'm connecting to server, right? So I need to actually send my send all the details, like who I am, what I need exactly. I have to tell. JWT exists actually to solve this particular problem. Okay, how it will solve, we'll see now. I'll give you another example. Okay, so suppose you are a customer, and you called up a customer care service desk. You called up for some service. Then the service desk person will ask you, right? What is your name and all the details, right? So if it is a banking side, it may ask your date of birth and all those things too for verification purpose. Now the person will ask you what is the problem. If the person is able to resolve your problem, it's fine. Otherwise, what he or she will do, he will take your request in a ticket form, right? That's what all this customer service will work. They'll create a ticket, okay, with your details, and then they'll give you the ticket number. And they'll tell, okay, today our timing is already gone. We are closing now. Call up tomorrow with this ticket number. Somebody will help you. Okay. Now what will happen? The client calls up the same customer care next day. There might be any other person takes the call, right? How that person will know what is the problem? So customer can actually simplify that process with that ticket ID, because the ticket will have all the information, right? Similarly, if you can relate this story to the client server example. So client will first send the request with his credentials, maybe username, password. Server will authenticate, and then server will send back a token, or any, you can consider that as a ticket here. So which will be unique ID, which only the client and the server knows. And each time client connect the server, it will use that. So that's how all this application works. Like we really don't need to log in again and again, right? So once we log in, after that we can perform the operations till that session is valid, basically. So now what will happen when here it is this is like a regular session based communication. Now what will happen in JWT, right? So JWT, what it will do actually, server will, first step is same, like you have to authenticate, okay, with your username and password. Okay, I'll show you one diagram here. So for example, the first step, right? So it will this is a post call, basically user login. So you are giving username and password. That can be a basic auth, right? So server will create a token with a secret. I'll tell about like how it creates a token and all in a while, but it will create a token basically, and it will return that token to the client, and then client will send the token to the next consecutive request. It will send the token in as an authorization header. But how this token is actually different than regular this thing, right? Regular client this session based token, right? So that is important to know. Although it is a token basically, but it have a uniqueness, like it will be having header, payload, and signature also. Okay, so how the token is getting constructed, and how all the entire communication happens, right? We'll see in a while. I'll draw it basically. So but this is the flow, like In previously also how auth was happening, right? So when you send a request, first we used to give our username, password, or client credentials, secret, all those things, right? And after that, it was returning a code basically, and then with the code we used to again send a request and then get the token. So here also it will send a token, and each time you are sending a request, you have to send a token basically. So what is the token? Token have three format actually: header, payload, and the signature. So that is the uniqueness. Okay. Let me give you another example here so that you can relate. Let's go back to the service center example. Okay. So suppose the service center guy, the agent, doesn't have anything to create a ticket. Okay, assume that he doesn't have a database. Okay, he doesn't have any tool to create a ticket. Now, in that scenario, how the service agent will help the customer? Okay, so what he will do, or he or she will do, he will write, maybe he will write all the details of the customer which is needed for that issue to resolve in a piece of paper, right? And he can give that piece of paper telling that these are the details. Whenever you're coming next, you bring this paper, right? He can give that piece of paper to customer, and no, as a proof, right? As a proof, as a claim, like of that service. Now, whenever customer comes back, he or she customer can bring that paper. Now you can ask me, what if somebody else gets that paper, right? Somebody can, customer may miss that paper, or somebody might have stolen it, right? What will happen in that case? That's the reason there is a additional layer of security here. Like agent can tell, let's sign it. You also sign, I will also sign, right? Let's make this piece of paper, this contract secure. So JWT also same concept. The agreement which happens between client and server, right? So that has to be signed. There should be a signature, and how you will sign it, what algorithm you will be using it, that also will be part of the message. Okay, there are different algorithms which can be used, but whatever you are using to signing your this information, so that will be part of the message, like header, payload, and the signature basically. So there is a problem here, right? Suppose in a typical client server application, right? So in a microservices kind of environment, you will be having load balancer, right? In between, we talked about API gateways, right? So API gateway is a load balancer. Now, suppose in a session based, session based communication, right? So where we save the token, we save the token in maybe cookies, right? In the client side, and then we send that information in every request, right? Now, if it is one server, one client, that works fine, right? But if there are multiple instances of the server running behind a load balancer, right? What will happen if, suppose the first, okay, I'll draw it, I think then it will be clear. So I have a client, okay, then I have a load balancer, or you can say API gateway, right? And then you might be having multiple instances of the server or the API basically which you are actually consuming running. Okay, so app instance 1, it be app instance 2, app instance 3. Okay, now client is sending a request here. Okay, now load balancer maybe it is seeing this is free, so what it will do, it will send a request back, right, to the client, right? Now in the client side, maybe you are saving that in cookies, right? So you are sending one more request. Now load balancer is seeing this guy is app 1 is busy, right? So it may contact app 2, but how app 2 will know, right? This is 2. That this client is, because app 2 may not have that instance, right? That lookup table will not be available here, right? App 2 will not be knowing the client, right? That is a problem, and because of that only there is a concept called shared cache. You might be hearing about Radish and all. So that's where you save it in a shared cache, so that every time client send a request, irrespective of from which instance the load balancer is returning, we know the client who it is from the lookup table. Okay, that is one way. Another way is like, this is traditional approach I'm telling. So in traditional approach, like session based approach, or else we can use sticky session pattern. Sticky session pattern means load balancer knows from where that request has been actually served. So every time for that any request comes for a specific client, it will send off only from app 1 only. It will not contact the 2 and 3 if app 1 is up and running always. So sticky session is one pattern basically. Okay. If you have this, so it will sit in between here. Okay, so that is for traditional approach, right? So now we want to see how it works in JWT, right? So let's see that. Same client, and I have a server. Okay, now my request 1. These boxes are very big. Okay, consider that this is my request number 1. Okay, I'm sending maybe user ID and password, right, to the client. And what client will do, right? First step, server will do basically. The second step, authenticate, right? So it will authenticate the user. Then third step, it will create the JWT token. Okay, then in the fourth step, JWT token to client. It will return token to the client basically. Okay, now it's up to the client how client will use that token. Okay, so in the fifth step, client will save the token, right? somewhere it has to save for the next future request, right? Client can save in maybe local storage. Local storage, you know, right? Or cookies. So any place client can save it. I mean, client can do what the way client want to the implementation. Okay. Then I'll have a sixth call. Okay. In the sixth call, suppose I want the actual resource, right? I want resource maybe A, B, C, whatever resource I want. Authorization, header, right? Error. Then I'll send the JWT. And now onwards, I'll be sending this token, in each request. Now, how the server will create this token basically, right? So, I told you, right? The JWT token will be having actually 3 parts basically. If you see, you can go to this particular link. JWT.io. Okay. You can see here the token will look like this. Okay. So there will be 3 parts basically. You can see 3 colors here, right? So there are 3 parts. The first part is the header. Header will have information like which is the algorithm, right? So in the top, you can see the supported algorithms. For this particular, it is selected, but you can use different also. Depending on our implementation, we can use different algorithm. Algorithm type will be JWT always. Then the payload, right? So payload will be having the user information like username or any other thing like user which identify that particular user basically. So as I was telling you the generic example, right? So we should have the user details to verify that particular user, right? So all the user detail information will be encrypted in the payload. And then the most important part is the signature. So it will create a signature. Okay. And signature is the blue color part of the token. Well, how actually it will match the signature, right? Basically, suppose you have sent, it has sent a token, right? So you are sending the token back again in the last request we are sharing, right? So server will create a token. Token will have these 3 parts basically, right? And then client again sending the token, right? So how the server will know? This is same, right? So what it will do, basically it will decode using that signature and it will match. If some tampering happens, like, in between, if somebody tampered the username, right, or something. So that can be, solved using this signature method. Okay. There are some issues here. Okay, so yeah, JWT, again, it is good, but there are some issues. So what are the issues basically? One is like security, as you told before, right? So security is one because everything will go as a raw payload, right? So hacker can actually hack it. So what, as a best practice, they suggest like confidential information should not be part of it. Second thing is you should always use JWT token with HTTPS. Okay, no, you should not use HTTP. The example I'm showing is HTTP, but we should not use HTTP actually. We should always use HTTPS. Okay. And you can combine this with auth 2 basically. So in that way, like, both your authentication and authorization will be taken care. Okay. Okay. another problem. See, in a session-based thing, right? Session-based application, right? Supports log off. When we log in, we can log off, right? At any point of time, irrespective of session expired or not expired, right? We can log off, right? But JWT, there's no way you can log off. That is the major drawback of JWT. Because server doesn't save anything in the server side, right? So here, other way, like we can use cookies and all, so we can actually log off. But here, there is no way we can log off. To mitigate that, there is a concept called blacklisted JWT. Okay, so what it is actually, we can maintain a list of JWT tokens in the server which are not valid. Okay, yeah, so those are the drawbacks, but otherwise, this is again another way how we can actually manage tokens. Yeah, as part of best practice, we can always actually pair it with auth2 and HTTPS to get the maximum benefit.